All right, Sandra, thank you very much. It is blame game time, and the topic, what else? The foreclosure mess. Is government, the banks, or are the individuals who took out the mortgages responsible for it? Well, taking sides is Erica Payne, founder of the Agenda Project, and Mark Matson, founder and CEO of Matson Money. This should be interesting. Erica, let's start it off with you. So who is to blame?
I think basically everybody's to blame. People shouldn't take out home loans they can't afford. Regulators should have kept an eye on the bank. Banks shouldn't have lent to people that they knew couldn't afford it. You know, on and on and on. I mean, the list of who's to blame is basically endless.
Yeah, but you know what? Surely it really comes down to the banks. If they should not have been giving these loans out, human nature, if you're going to put me in a house that looks really nice, a big old house in the suburbs, you earn $45,000, it's worth $600,000, someone's going to give the money, 9 times out of 10 you're going to take it. Isn't it the banks?
Well, I mean, is it human nature? Maybe it's human nature, but I know a lot of people I grew up with in North Carolina don't have the kind of human nature that leads them to take out loans they can't afford. You know, I mean, my dad doesn't turn on the heat in our house until January. You know, there are people out there who really try to live honestly in the world. And one of the problems with this crisis is that basically a few bad apples, you know, became many bad apples, and the many bad apples blew up the whole orchard.
Interesting. All right. Well, Mike, what about you? What about the government? Weren't they the ones really pushing all of this in the first place? All that easy money and wanting people to live the American dream?
Well, it was an easy money environment, wasn't it? I mean, yeah, we had centralized planning through the government pushing the easy credit for the easy loans, but we also had not only homeowners like Erica's talking about that were buying a home to live in, we had people speculating and gambling on homes, flipping homes. We had bankers who, it was an easy money environment. I mean, the first law in business school is, you know, watch your leverage because leverage kills, and diversification. And the banks forgot about that. So it was the government pushing the money like a drug dealer. It was the homeowners jumping into houses they couldn't afford, many of them. It was speculators, and it was the banks riding this easy money tide. So yeah, everybody's to blame, and the mortgage packagers, the investment bankers repackaging the stuff and pushing the mortgages out on the market. Plenty of blame to go around on this one.
Mark makes a great point. I mean, one of the issues is that there's lots of people made bad decisions. There are lots of people to blame in this. The issue that I have with how we set about trying to fix it is that Mark's decision to take out a loan he can't afford should not bring down an entire system that then affects the good decision I made to take out a home loan that I could afford, because Mark's bad decision, when it's connected in a system, then makes my home worth significantly less than it should be. And so there's something that connects that. And what connects that is the securitization of these loans. And that activity happened at the banks, and it was overseen by the government.
Right.
And so it's really there. I don't think the individual should have made the bad decision, but the fact that an individual bad decision leads to this systemic problem is where the fix needs to come, in my opinion.
Well, they were enabled. And by the way, I don't think I've ever heard Erica say, I agree with Mark. Maybe that's the bigger headline.
Well,
So
I missed him. He's been gone for 2 weeks.
Maybe that's it. Okay, well, listen, Erica, let me ask you very quickly, what is the solution here? Do the banks have a moral responsibility to buy back some of these bad bonds that were, full of bad loans?
You know, I'm not one of these liberals who thinks that business has a moral obligation to do something. I think that we have incentives that we set up either through rules and regulations that we make or through a marketplace. And when those rules and regulations in the marketplace work effectively, you don't have to ask somebody to make a moral decision. They're going to make a business decision that's the right decision to make. And I actually co-edited a volume. I'll do a little promotion here. It's a volume the Roosevelt Institute put out. That is my personal book. Here it is.
Just happen to have it
called Make Markets Be Markets. And it's put out, by a lot of people that people would think are really liberal, but that we found a lot of very far right wingers agreed with, where what we suggest in a whole array of chapters on derivatives and regulatory incentives and everything else is that we bring market principles back to the financial sector. So transparency, competition, the freedom to fail. And by bringing those market principles back to the market, it will actually function more effectively. And we won't have to ask somebody to make a moral decision or an immoral decision. They'll make a business decision that the market's helping them make.
You know what? It became so absolutely ludicrous. My 11-year-old daughter could have bought a home and taken out a mortgage with no income, no job, no assets. And if you're going to pick a couple of villains, how about Chris Dodd and Barney Frank, who used their powerful chairmanships to browbeat banks and lenders to give out mortgages to people who are utterly unqualified and who shouldn't have received them? And, you know, these are two guys who now are doing their best Claude Rains imitation. I'm shocked that bad mortgages were being issued here.
Oh, the irony.
Yeah,
Well,
and by the way, those two, we know Chris Dodd won't be around anymore. Barney Frank is on the ropes right now up in Massachusetts.
Mark, go ahead.
There were serious warnings, and there were congressional hearings. They were warned about this as early as 94 and 95, that there was a bubble brewing here, and they completely ignored it all. You can add Bernanke in there. Bernanke said it cannot happen. Well, yeah, it can happen. It did happen.
Well, I think that, you know, there's a lot of blame being put on people who took out mortgages they couldn't afford, and they certainly own, you know, they deserve their share of the blame. But the fact of the matter is, you know, the rules that should have governed all of that were not in place anymore. And the banks did spend $600 million over the last year and a half trying to make sure that there weren't any more rules put into place to keep that kind of thing from happening. And so there I say, you know, we've got to really look at what's happening here. Did Chris Dodd and Barney Frank make mistakes? Definitely. Did lots of Republicans make mistakes? Definitely. But who has the incentive here? The bank spent $600 million, presumably, because they're going to get a lot more than that back by keeping a market unregulated, not having to have competition and transparency. And they'll keep on gaming it and walking away with huge bonuses, and ultimately the taxpayers carry the bag.
Mark, what do you think? The bank's still anti-regulation despite everything that's happened?
Well, I think if you let banks go under when they're unprofitable, like we should have done, you won't have to worry about regulating them, because someone will be sitting at the CEO saying, hey, we better not make these bad loans. We have real risk, and we can all be in peril here. You have to have the moral responsibility in the fact that I'm going to go out of business and I have to bear the risk. The mortgage owner has to take the risk. If their house doesn't go up and they lose their job, the bank has to take the risk. You can't spread the risk to the taxpayer. But there is a cautionary tale here for investors. For people that are investing their portfolios long term, stay away from mortgages, stay away from long-term volatility and long bonds. Keep your fixed income short and high quality in government securities, and you won't have to worry about the things we're talking about right now.
Well, I think the other thing, though, is that, I mean, just keep in mind, y'all, you know, the banks are even bigger now than they were before this whole thing happened. And that's one of these lost facts in this whole thing. You know, the leverage requirements aren't any higher than they were. The banks are even more consolidated than they were. They're even more connected than they were. And so the fact of the matter is we actually have a bigger problem now than we had before the last really big problem we had. And our ability to dig ourselves out of it is going down and down as we go, you know, higher and higher on deficits. We're not going to be able to fix it. So we've got to make sure this doesn't happen again.
Yeah, it's a good point, Erica. Whatever happened to too big to fail? They just apparently got
even bigger.
Even bigger. All right, we're out of time. Erica and Mark, thank you very much for
we didn't get in a fight.
I know, it was a very cordial debate. I promise.
I'm kind of disappointed a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. That's
But you got to
You wait, Mark.
We'll have to talk about taxes next time.
Or minimum wage. Minimum wage will be sure to get a fight.
There you go.
As Greg just said, you got a book plug in, Erica, so it wasn't all wasted time. Come
there
on
you
now.
go.
All right,
Thanks,
guys.
y'all.
Thank you very much.